"Ma'am, you are not staying in this cabin." The words cracked across the first-class aisle before the boarding door had even closed. Every head turned. A coffee cup paused halfway to someone's mouth. A child near the window stopped coloring. And in seat 1A, Dr. Naomi Bennett looked up slowly at the white security supervisor standing over her, his badge catching the cabin lights like it gave him the right to decide who belonged. Richard Cole was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a Navy airport security jacket that looked freshly pressed. His face was calm in the way some people looked calm when they had already made up their minds about someone. Naomi wore a charcoal sweater, dark jeans, and plain leather flats. No designer bag. No diamonds. No assistant hovering nearby. Just a slim black carry-on tucked beneath the seat in front of her, and a boarding pass resting neatly on her lap. "My ticket says 1A," Naomi said. Her voice was low, steady, almost quiet enough to disappear beneath the hum of the air conditioning. Richard did not look at the ticket. "Your ticket may say a lot of things," he replied. "But this section is reserved for verified premium passengers." The sentence landed harder than he seemed to realize. Or maybe he realized exactly what he was saying. Across the aisle, a man in a tailored gray suit shifted uncomfortably. Behind Naomi, a woman in a cream blazer whispered something to her husband. At the front galley, Madison Clark, the lead flight attendant, folded her arms and watched with a tight, impatient smile. "We have a seating issue," Madison said. "There's been a reassignment." Naomi glanced at the empty seat beside her, then at the boarding pass in her hand. "I checked in yesterday. I selected this seat 3 weeks ago." Madison's smile did not move. "Sometimes the system updates." "Does it?" Naomi asked. For the first time, Madison looked away. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here." Now, back to Naomi Bennett. Naomi had flown through airports since she was a little girl, first beside her mother with a plastic suitcase and a paper boarding pass, later alone with contracts in her briefcase and investors waiting on the other side of the country. She knew the rhythm of an airline cabin. The practiced smiles. The coded language. The moment a simple question became an accusation. Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice without lowering the insult. "We need you to move to the rear cabin while we verify your credentials." Naomi looked past him, toward the boarding bridge. A white couple stood there with matching luggage and first-class tags hanging from their bags. The man pointed toward seat 1A. Madison nodded at him as if the decision had already been made. Naomi understood then. This was not a seating issue. It was a judgment. A quick, careless judgment based on her skin, her clothes, and the fact that she had entered first class without looking like the version of wealth they expected. "You're giving my seat away," Naomi said. Richard's jaw tightened. "I'm giving you an opportunity to cooperate." A young trainee flight attendant named Lily Foster stood frozen near the galley. Her eyes flicked toward the scanner in her hand. It had flashed green when Naomi boarded. She had seen it. Everyone who mattered had seen it. But no one had said a word. Not yet. Naomi folded her boarding pass once and placed it inside her purse. Then she looked directly at Richard Cole. "You're not protecting this airline," she said. "You're exposing it." Richard gave a short laugh, the kind that came from certainty, not humor. "Ma'am, I think you're confused about where you are." Naomi's expression did not change. But somewhere beneath the calm, something old stirred. Not fear. Not embarrassment. Memory. And this time, she was not going to let anyone rewrite the truth. Richard Cole did not answer her right away. He stood in the aisle with one hand near his radio, watching Naomi as if her calm was the problem. Around them, the cabin had changed. It was no longer a place where strangers quietly waited for takeoff. It had become a room full of people measuring every word. Madison Clark glanced toward the boarding door, then back at the couple waiting near the front. The man in the gray suit had already placed his coat over the armrest beside seat 1A, as if the seat belonged to him before Naomi had even stood up. "Sir," Naomi said, looking at him, "did the airline assign you this seat?" He cleared his throat and looked toward Madison. "I was told there had been a mix-up." "By whom?" Naomi asked. He did not answer. His wife shifted beside him, her expression uneasy now. She had been smiling when they first stepped aboard, but the smile had faded under the weight of what was happening. Madison stepped forward, her voice clipped and professional in the way people sounded when they wanted cruelty to pass for procedure. "Dr. Bennett, we are trying to resolve this discreetly." Naomi looked at her. "You have said my name." Madison froze for half a second. It was small, almost invisible. But Lily Foster saw it. The trainee had been holding the boarding scanner close to her chest, her fingers wrapped tightly around its handle. She had checked the passenger manifest herself. "Dr. Naomi Bennett. Seat 1A. Confirmed. No alert. No duplicate booking. No issue at all." Yet Madison had told Richard there was a security concern before Naomi had even taken off her coat. Lily felt her stomach tighten. She had joined the airline 6 months earlier because she believed travel connected people. Her father had worked maintenance at a regional airport outside Columbus, Ohio, for 27 years. He always told her that a uniform meant responsibility, not power. Now she watched Madison use hers like a wall. "There is no security concern," Lily said. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Richard turned toward her. "Excuse me?" Lily swallowed. The entire cabin seemed to lean closer. "The scanner cleared her boarding pass," Lily said. "It was green. Her identification matched the manifest." Madison's eyes sharpened. "Lily, go back to the galley." "But it is true," Lily said. Naomi did not look at Lily with surprise. She looked at her with something steadier. Recognition. The kind that said speaking up mattered, even when your voice shook. Richard stepped closer to Naomi's row. "This is not your concern," he said. Naomi lifted her chin. "It became my concern when you decided my ticket was less important than someone else's assumption." A man in row 3, Marcus Hill, lowered his phone from where he had been pretending to read a message. He had watched enough airport incidents online to know what silence could do. He had also watched enough to know that recordings could become spectacle. Still, the way Richard stood over Naomi made his thumb hover over the screen. Naomi noticed. "Please do not film me," she said. Marcus paused. "They are treating you wrong." "Then say that," Naomi replied. "Use your voice." The words moved through the cabin with more force than a shout. A woman near the window nodded slowly. The man in the gray suit removed his coat from the empty seat beside Naomi. Madison looked toward the cockpit, clearly hoping for someone with more authority to end the problem she had created. Naomi rested one hand on her purse. Inside was a phone, a set of documents, and a single number that could change the future of this airline before the plane ever left the gate. But she did not reach for any of it. Not yet. She watched Richard Cole look at her, as if he had already won. And she let him keep believing it. The cockpit door opened with a soft mechanical click, and Captain Thomas Reed stepped into the cabin with the measured confidence of a man who believed every problem could be solved by making his voice louder than everyone else's. He was in his late 50s, silver at the temples, uniform perfect from collar to polished shoes. Madison moved toward him immediately, speaking low but fast. Richard stood beside her, arms crossed, already shaping the story before Naomi had been allowed to finish a sentence. "She refused to comply," Madison said. "There is a discrepancy with her seating assignment, and she has been disruptive." Naomi looked at Madison, then at Captain Reed. "I have not raised my voice," she said. "I have not refused a lawful instruction. I asked why my valid seat was being given away." Captain Reed did not answer her question. His eyes moved over Naomi's sweater, her jeans, her carry-on, then back to Richard. It was only a glance, but it carried an entire decision. "Ma'am," he said, "the crew has discretion when there is a concern about cabin safety." "What concern?" Naomi asked. "You have not identified one." Richard gave a short exhale through his nose. "We are not required to debate operational decisions with passengers." Marcus Hill stood from row 3. He did not hold his phone up. He did not point it at anyone. He simply faced the front of the cabin. "She showed a valid ticket," he said. "The trainee confirmed it scanned green." "What exactly is the issue?" Captain Reed turned toward him. "Sir, please return to your seat." Marcus did not move. "I will, after somebody answers the question." The cabin fell quiet again. Even the sounds from the jet bridge seemed farther away now. Lily stood near the galley, pale but steady. "Captain," she said, "the manifest shows Dr. Bennett in seat 1A. There is no reassignment in the system." Madison snapped her head toward Lily. "You are not authorized to interpret the manifest." Lily's cheeks flushed, but she did not lower her eyes. "I am authorized to read it." Naomi watched the young woman carefully. She knew what it cost to speak when everyone around you wanted silence. She had spent years in rooms where the truth was visible but inconvenient. Years in boardrooms where people praised courage only after it was safe. Captain Reed stepped closer to Naomi's seat. "Dr. Bennett, I need you to come with us to the gate area while we sort this out." Naomi looked beyond him at the open cabin door. The gray-suited passenger was still waiting near the front, now holding his first-class boarding pass too tightly. His wife had turned away from him. She looked ashamed, though she had not said a word. "You want me to leave my seat," Naomi said. "So you can give it to him." Captain Reed's mouth tightened. "This is not about another passenger." "Then why is he standing there?" No one answered. Richard reached for his radio. "We can make this easier," he said. "Or we can escalate." Naomi's gaze settled on him. "You have been escalating since the moment you saw me." Richard looked away first. It was brief, but the cabin saw it. A woman in row 4 spoke up from behind her magazine. "I watched the whole thing. They never checked her ticket until after they decided she did not belong." Another voice joined from the back. "That is exactly what happened." Madison's professional smile was gone now. Captain Reed looked toward the cockpit, then toward the gate, calculating delays, complaints, and the growing number of witnesses. Naomi remained seated, composed, her hands folded over her purse. Beneath that calm, a clock was ticking. Not the flight clock. Not the departure clock. A different one. The kind that began the moment people in power mistook patience for permission. Captain Reed glanced at the departure clock above the galley. 7 minutes until scheduled pushback. 7 minutes before the cabin crew would have to explain why a full plane was still sitting at the gate. He looked at Naomi again, and the impatience in his face hardened into something colder. "Dr. Bennett, this is your final request," he said. "Step off the aircraft so we can resolve this without further disruption." Naomi did not move. She did not grip the armrest. She did not look around for approval. She sat with the stillness of someone who had spent a lifetime learning that people often revealed themselves when they believed they held all the power. "Captain Reed," she said, "I have answered every question you asked. I showed my ticket. Your crew confirmed it was valid. You have not identified a safety concern, a policy violation, or a reason to remove me from a seat I paid for." Her voice was not loud, but every syllable reached the last row. "So I will ask you once more. What exactly are you asking me to leave for?" Captain Reed's expression tightened. Madison stepped in before he could respond. "Your attitude is making the crew uncomfortable." A low murmur moved through the cabin. Marcus Hill shook his head. "Her attitude?" he said. "She has been calmer than every person standing over her." Madison turned toward him. "Sir, do not interfere." Marcus looked at Naomi, then back at Madison. "I am not interfering. I am witnessing." Lily Foster took one small step forward from the galley. Her uniform seemed too large for her suddenly, as if the airline had given her a role but not the protection to use it. "Captain," she said, "there is a note on the seat record." Madison's eyes flashed. "Lily. It says executive hold," Lily continued, her voice shaking now. "The seat was manually flagged after Dr. Bennett boarded." The words hit the cabin like a door slamming shut. The gray-suited man near the front looked down at his shoes. His wife turned toward Madison. "Did you tell us that seat was available?" she asked. Madison did not answer. Richard Cole's radio crackled at his shoulder. He pressed a button and spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. "Gate support needed at aircraft 12. Passenger refusal." Naomi heard him. So did everyone else. She slowly reached into her purse and removed her phone. The screen lit up against her palm. For a moment, Captain Reed looked relieved, as if he assumed she was calling someone to complain. Someone who would be placed on hold. Someone who would hear a polished version of events and promise to investigate later. He did not know that Naomi Bennett had never built her life around waiting for other people to decide whether her dignity mattered. At 22, she had watched her mother stand at a rental car counter in Dallas while an employee asked 3 times whether the credit card was really hers. Her mother had kept her voice soft. She had smiled through the humiliation because Naomi was beside her. That night, in a roadside motel, her mother had said something Naomi never forgot. "They will try to make you prove you belong in rooms they did not build for you." Naomi had spent the next 20 years building rooms of her own. Companies, funds, partnerships, entire systems that moved money farther and faster than most people could imagine. She looked at the phone in her hand, then at Richard. "You called this a passenger refusal," Naomi said. "No. This is a record of your decision." Richard's face changed slightly. Not fear yet, but uncertainty. The first crack in certainty. Naomi tapped one name on her screen. Evelyn Grant. Her executive assistant answered before the first ring had fully ended. "Dr. Bennett," Evelyn said, clear and composed. Naomi looked directly at Captain Reed. "Evelyn," she said, "start documenting everything from this moment forward." Evelyn Grant did not ask what happened. She had worked beside Naomi Bennett for 9 years, long enough to recognize the difference between an inconvenience and a line that had been crossed. "Documentation is active," Evelyn said. "I have the flight number, gate, crew roster, and live cabin manifest. Do you want legal notified?" Naomi kept her eyes on Captain Reed. "Not yet." Madison let out a small, impatient breath. "This is becoming unnecessarily dramatic." Naomi turned her head toward her. "No. It became serious when you changed a passenger record after I boarded." Madison's face went still. Lily looked down at the scanner in her hands, then back at Naomi. The young trainee had heard enough. She walked toward the nearest empty seat, opened the crew tablet, and tapped through the manifest with trembling fingers. "The original assignment is still in the audit history," Lily said. "Seat 1A was assigned to Dr. Naomi Bennett at 6:14 yesterday morning. The executive hold was added at 4:52 this afternoon." Captain Reed stepped toward her. "Lily, stop accessing internal records." "I am looking at the records you told us to follow," Lily replied. Her voice was quiet, but it no longer broke. The gray-suited passenger near the front shifted his weight. "Madison," he said, "you told us there was an open seat because the passenger had not arrived." Madison stared at him. "Mr. Carlyle, this is not the time." His wife looked from Naomi to Madison, her face pale. "Then whose idea was it?" she asked. No one spoke. The silence was not empty. It was crowded with everything they had tried to hide. Richard Cole took a step toward Naomi's row, his radio still in his hand. "Ma'am, you are delaying this flight. We need you to exit the aircraft now." Naomi looked at him with the same calm she had carried from the beginning. "You are the one delaying this flight, Mr. Cole. You are standing in an aisle, refusing to recognize a valid ticket, while witnesses confirm that your team altered the record." Richard's jaw flexed. You do not get to dictate security procedure. I am not dictating anything, Naomi said. I am describing what happened. Marcus Hill spoke from behind her. And we all saw it. More voices followed. The woman in row 4 said, She never caused the problem. A man near the window added, The crew did. Even the couple who had been waiting for Naomi's seat stood silent now, separated by a few feet of carpet and a truth neither of them could ignore. Evelyn's voice came through Naomi's phone again. Dr. Bennett, I have confirmed the aircraft is operated by Horizon Atlantic. Their board meeting begins in 23 minutes. Naomi's eyes remained on Captain Reed. Good, she said. Captain Reed frowned. Why would that matter? Naomi did not answer him. Not yet. She looked at Lily instead. You did the right thing, she said. Lily's eyes filled, but she held herself steady. I just read the screen. Naomi nodded once. That is how truth begins. Someone reads what is right in front of them. Richard's radio crackled again. Gate support was waiting outside. Madison glanced toward the open door as if help was coming to rescue her from the consequences of her own choices. Naomi listened to the sound of footsteps approaching from the jet bridge. Then she looked down at her phone and spoke with quiet precision. Evelyn, prepare the incident file. Include the altered seating record, the crew statements, and every witness who is willing to be named. Evelyn paused for only a second. Understood. Naomi lifted her eyes to the people standing over her. You wanted me removed before you knew who I was, she said. Now you will have to explain why. The footsteps stopped at the aircraft door, but the help Madison expected did not arrive in the form she imagined. 2 gate supervisors stood just beyond the threshold, both wearing the strained expressions of people who had been told there was a problem but had not been told the truth. Behind them stood a woman in a dark airport operations uniform, her name badge reading Carla Monroe. She looked from Richard Cole to Captain Reed, then to Naomi seated in 1A. Who called for gate support? Carla asked. Richard lifted his radio. I did. Passenger refusal. Possible security issue. Carla's eyes moved to Naomi. What is the security issue? Richard hesitated. It was only 1 second, but it was enough. Captain Reed stepped in. There is a dispute over seating and the passenger has declined to deplane while we investigate. Naomi looked directly at Carla. There is no dispute over seating. My ticket was valid. The crew confirmed it was valid. Then someone placed an executive hold on my seat after I boarded. Carla's expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough for Madison to notice. Is that accurate? Carla asked. Madison crossed her arms. There are internal details that should not be discussed in front of passengers. Then discuss them with me, Carla replied. Lily held the crew tablet against her chest. Her hands were steadier now. I can show you the audit history, she said. Madison stepped toward her. Lily, you have already said enough. Naomi watched Lily's face. The young woman was afraid. Anyone could see it. But she did not step back. She walked past Madison and handed the tablet to Carla. The gate supervisor studied the screen in silence. Her eyes moved line by line. Original seat assignment. Green boarding scan. Manual executive hold. Timestamp. User authorization. Then Carla looked up. Madison, why was this record changed? Madison's mouth opened, but no answer came. Richard shifted his stance. This is being blown out of proportion. We were trying to accommodate a premium customer. The words fell into the cabin and stayed there. A premium customer. Marcus Hill repeated them quietly, almost to himself. So she was not premium enough for you. Richard turned toward him. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said, Marcus replied. Captain Reed looked toward the gate supervisors, trying to recover the authority that had been slipping from him since Lily spoke. We need to get this aircraft moving. This can be addressed after departure. Naomi gave a small, humorless smile. That is how people like you prefer it. Make the decision first. Investigate later. Apologize when the witnesses are gone. Captain Reed's face reddened. Dr. Bennett, I have been professional throughout this process. Naomi's voice stayed level. Professional is not a uniform. It is a choice. Carla Monroe looked down at the tablet again. The executive hold was entered under Madison Clark's credentials, she said. Madison's eyes widened. I did not put that there. Lily looked at her. You had the tablet in the galley. Madison turned sharply. Are you accusing me? Lily took a breath. I am saying what I saw. The cabin did not erupt. It did something more powerful. It listened. Every passenger watched Madison, Richard, and Captain Reed with the same question in their eyes. Naomi's phone vibrated softly in her hand. Evelyn Grant was calling back. Naomi answered without looking away from the front of the cabin. Evelyn, she said. Update. Evelyn's voice was calm, but there was urgency beneath it. The Horizon Atlantic Board has been notified that you are involved in an active incident on Flight 218. The chair is requesting confirmation before the meeting begins. Naomi looked at Captain Reed. Tell them they will have it. Then she ended the call. Richard's confidence was gone now. In its place was something smaller. Something restless. He looked at Naomi as if he was seeing her for the first time. But Naomi had been there all along. For the first time, Madison Clark looked less like a lead flight attendant and more like someone trapped inside the consequences of her own decision. Her eyes moved from Carla Monroe to the tablet, then to Richard Cole, searching for a version of the story that would still protect her. This is a misunderstanding, Madison said. Mr. Carlyle is a high-value passenger. He was promised an upgrade because of a service failure on his previous flight. Mr. Carlyle stepped forward from the boarding area, his face tense. I was offered an available seat, he said. I was never told anyone would be removed from me. His wife looked at Madison with open disappointment. You told us the seat was empty. Madison's voice sharpened. It was supposed to be. Naomi heard the words, and something inside her became very still. Not because she was surprised. She had heard versions of that sentence her whole life. You were not supposed to be here. You were not supposed to have that job. You were not supposed to own that company. You were not supposed to take up space where someone else had already decided you did not belong. Captain Reed rubbed a hand across his jaw. We need to separate the facts from the emotions, he said. Naomi looked at him. The facts are on the tablet. The emotions are what led you to ignore them. Carla Monroe kept the tablet in her hands. Captain, I need a written explanation from every crew member before this aircraft moves. Captain Reed stared at her. You cannot delay a flight over an internal customer service complaint. Carla did not blink. This is no longer a customer service complaint. A passenger record was altered, a valid seat was challenged, and a security call was made without a stated safety basis. Richard's posture stiffened. I acted on information from the crew. And what information was that? Carla asked. Richard looked toward Madison. Madison looked toward Captain Reed. The silence passed between them like a bill none of them wanted to pay. Naomi's phone vibrated again. This time, she did not answer immediately. She looked out the window at the gray morning sky beyond the runway. The glass reflected a faint image of her face, composed and unreadable. For a second, she was not on an aircraft. She was 16 years old again, standing beside her mother at a hotel counter in Charlotte, wearing a blue dress for a college tour. The clerk had looked at her mother's credit card, then at their luggage, then at the line behind them. We need to verify this, the clerk had said. 2 white families checked in beside them without showing anything but a last name. Naomi had watched her mother smile through it. She had watched her mother pretend it did not hurt. Later, in their room, her mother sat on the edge of the bed and said, Do not let anybody make you smaller just because they cannot imagine you being this big. Naomi carried those words into every room she built. She carried them through her first failed investment pitch, through the years when investors called her ambitious like it was an accusation, through the night she signed the agreement that gave Bennett Global Capital control over the largest private financing facility in Horizon Atlantic's history. Her phone vibrated once more. Naomi answered. Evelyn. The board chair is on the line, Evelyn said. He has asked whether the incident involves the executive financing agreement. Naomi looked at Captain Reed, Madison, and Richard. It does now, she said. Richard took a step closer. What does that mean? Naomi lowered the phone slightly. Her expression did not change. It means you should have checked my ticket before you questioned my place on this plane. Naomi held the phone to her ear as the cabin waited. The air felt thinner now, charged by the kind of silence that came before a storm changed direction. Evelyn Grant's voice remained calm on the line. The board chair is listening. The general counsel is present. The financing committee has paused its agenda. Naomi looked toward the front of the aircraft. Captain Reed had stopped trying to look in control. Madison stood beside the galley with her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had turned pale. Richard Cole kept one hand near his radio, but he no longer touched it. Put the chair through, Naomi said. A new voice came on the line, older, careful, and suddenly very aware of every person who could hear him. Dr. Bennett, this is Harold Whitman. Naomi knew the voice well. Harold had sat across from her 18 months earlier, asking Bennett Global Capital to provide the $5 billion liquidity facility that kept Horizon Atlantic's expansion plan alive. He had called her brilliant then. He had called her essential. But now he sounded uncertain. We have been informed there is an incident involving Flight 218, Harold said. Naomi looked at the crew. That is correct. Can you tell us what happened? Naomi did not rush. She spoke clearly, as if she were presenting facts in a boardroom instead of sitting in the first row of an aircraft surrounded by people who had tried to erase her. I boarded with a valid first-class ticket. My seat was reassigned after I boarded. I was told I did not belong in this cabin. A security supervisor was called without a stated safety concern. The crew attempted to remove me while the seat was being offered to another passenger. The boarding record was altered under crew credentials. Harold was quiet for a moment. Is that accurate? Carla Monroe answered before anyone else could. I have reviewed the audit trail, she said. The record supports Dr. Bennett's statement. Captain Reed stepped forward, his voice strained. There were operational pressures and incomplete information. We were attempting to resolve a difficult situation. Naomi turned to him. You had complete information. You chose not to use it. Richard's face tightened. No one knew who you were, he said. The sentence escaped him before he could stop it. The cabin went still. Naomi looked at him for a long moment. That is the point, she said. You should not need to know who someone is before you treat them with basic dignity. Marcus Hill nodded slowly. Lily lowered her eyes, overwhelmed but relieved that someone had finally said it aloud. On the phone, Harold Whitman cleared his throat. Dr. Bennett, Horizon Atlantic takes this extremely seriously. Naomi's voice became colder, not louder. You should. Bennett Global Capital has a $5 billion facility scheduled for release this afternoon. That facility depends on your company meeting governance, compliance, and passenger treatment standards. Madison's breath caught. Captain Reed stared at Naomi as if the cabin floor had shifted beneath him. Harold spoke carefully. Are you indicating that the facility is at risk? Naomi looked out the window once more. Ground crews moved in the distance, unaware that the future of an entire airline was being decided in a single aisle. I am indicating that I will not finance a company that treats people as disposable because of what they look like, she said. Evelyn, suspend the release. Evelyn did not hesitate. The $5 billion facility is suspended pending review. The words landed quietly. But across the cabin, every face changed. For 3 seconds, nobody spoke. The words suspended the $5 billion facility is suspended seemed to settle over the cabin like a change in weather. Madison looked at Captain Reed. Captain Reed looked at Carla Monroe. Richard Cole stared at Naomi as if he had been waiting for her to laugh and admit it was all a bluff. But Naomi did not smile. She did not raise her voice. She simply sat in the seat they had tried to take from her, phone in hand, while the power they thought belonged to them began to disappear. Harold Whitman spoke again through the call, his voice tighter now. Dr. Bennett, I need to be clear. A suspension of the facility will trigger immediate review requirements across our operating plan. Yes, Naomi said. It will. It could affect aircraft deliveries, vendor payments, and our scheduled route expansion. Naomi looked at the passengers who had watched her be questioned, dismissed, and told to leave. Then your company should have considered that before it treated a passenger's dignity like an inconvenience. Evelyn's voice came back through the phone. The suspension notice has been sent to Horizon Atlantic Treasury, Legal, and the Board. The release scheduled for this afternoon is frozen. The financing review is active. A soft sound moved through the cabin. Not applause. Not yet. Just the collective breath of people realizing the scale of what had happened. Mr. Carlyle took a step away from seat 1A. I do not want that seat, he said quietly. I never did, not like this. His wife nodded. We will take our original seats. Madison tried to speak. Mr. Carlyle, we can still accommodate you. He looked at her with disbelief. You had a passenger removed from her own seat to accommodate me. Do not say that like it is a favor. Madison's face fell. Lily Foster stood near the galley, holding the crew tablet at her side. She looked at Naomi with a mixture of awe and sadness. Dr. Bennett, Lily said. I am sorry. Naomi turned toward her. You did not do this. Lily's eyes filled. I did not stop it fast enough. Naomi's expression softened. You spoke when it mattered. Remember that. Carla Monroe stepped into the aisle and addressed Captain Reed with the formal tone of someone who had reached the end of patience. Captain, you, Madison Clark, and Richard Cole will need to provide written statements before any further action is taken. Until then, you are not to contact or question Dr. Bennett without legal and operations present. Richard's face darkened. You cannot sideline me based on her phone call. Carla met his eyes. I can remove you from this situation based on the evidence already in my hands. Richard looked toward Naomi again. You planned this, he said. Naomi's gaze did not move. No. I boarded a flight I paid for. You wanted us to fail. No, Naomi replied. You made a choice before you knew my name. You made another choice after you saw proof. And then you made another choice when people told you the truth. Captain Reed stepped forward, his authority now sounding like a plea. Dr. Bennett, perhaps we can discuss a resolution privately. Naomi looked at him. You did not offer privacy when you questioned me in front of this cabin. His shoulders dropped. Outside, the boarding door remained open. The flight was no longer preparing for departure. It was waiting. On Naomi's phone, Evelyn spoke again. The board chair has asked whether you intend to withdraw the facility entirely. Naomi looked down the aisle at the crew members who had mistaken silence for surrender. Then she answered with calm precision. Tell them the review will determine whether Horizon Atlantic has earned the right to keep it. The answer from Evelyn did not come immediately. In the quiet that followed, the aircraft felt less like a cabin and more like a courtroom where every person had suddenly understood that the verdict was no longer theirs to control. Then Evelyn spoke. The board understands. The review terms have been issued. No funds will move until Horizon Atlantic provides a complete response to the incident and a corrective action plan approved by Bennett Global Capital. Harold Whitman came back on the line, his voice stripped of the smooth confidence he had carried into so many negotiations. Dr. Bennett, I want to offer my personal assurance that the company will address this. Naomi looked at the people standing in the aisle. Madison, who had called her attitude a problem. Captain Reed, who had tried to turn a valid ticket into a reason to remove her. Richard, who had decided she did not belong before he had ever looked at her name. Assurances are easy, Naomi said. Accountability is harder. Harold was silent. Naomi continued. I want the audit history preserved. I want the passenger manifest preserved. I want the crew communications preserved. I want every prior complaint involving seat reassignment, passenger profiling, and unsupported security escalations reviewed by an independent team. Carla Monroe nodded slowly as she listened. That can be done, Harold said. It will be done, Naomi corrected. And I want the people who spoke up today protected from retaliation. Lily looked up sharply. Her breath caught. Naomi met her eyes. Courage should not cost someone their career. Carla placed the crew tablet under her arm. I will personally document Lily Foster's statement and her cooperation, she said. There will be no retaliation. Madison looked toward Lily with an expression that tried to become regret. But Lily did not look back at her. She was staring at Naomi, perhaps seeing for the first time what it meant when someone used power to protect rather than punish. Captain Reed cleared his throat. Dr. Bennett, I owe you an apology. Naomi waited. He looked around the cabin, at the passengers who had heard every word. I made assumptions. I relied on incomplete information. I should have handled this differently. Naomi listened without interrupting. Then she said, You did not rely on incomplete information, Captain. You ignored complete information because it did not fit the conclusion you had already reached. His face tightened. Naomi's voice stayed calm. An apology matters when it changes what happens next. Otherwise, it is only a way to make the person you harmed carry your discomfort. Captain Reed lowered his gaze. Richard shifted near the door. I was following protocol, he said. Carla turned toward him. Show me the protocol that says a verified passenger can be removed from a paid seat because another passenger wants it. Richard did not answer. Show me the protocol that says a security call can be made without a specific safety concern, Carla continued. Still nothing. Marcus Hill stood beside his seat, arms folded. There is no protocol, he said. There was just bias. Richard's face hardened, but the word had already entered the cabin. It did not need to be shouted. It had been present in every glance, every delay, every attempt to make Naomi explain herself while no one asked the same of the people accusing her. Naomi rose from seat 1A slowly. No one tried to stop her. She stood in the aisle with her purse over one shoulder, steady and composed. I am not leaving because you told me to, she said. I am leaving because this flight cannot move forward until your company decides what kind of airline it wants to be. Then she turned to Evelyn. Notify the board that I am requesting an immediate operational review of Horizon Atlantic's passenger conduct standards. Evelyn answered at once. Already in motion. And outside the open aircraft door, the runway lights continued to glow, while an entire airline waited for Naomi Bennett's next decision. Naomi stepped toward the open aircraft door, but she stopped before crossing the threshold. The cabin watched her in complete silence. Captain Reed stood near the galley, no longer commanding the space. Madison had moved back against the wall, her face drained of color. Richard remained by the door with his radio hanging uselessly at his side. For nearly 40 minutes, they had treated Naomi Bennett like a problem to be removed. Now they were waiting to see whether she would remove something far larger. Her phone vibrated again. Evelyn Grant spoke before Naomi could say hello. Dr. Bennett, the board has received the suspension notice. Treasury has confirmed that the $5 billion facility is frozen. The chief executive officer has ordered a temporary pause on all non-essential departures until the compliance team completes an initial review. A murmur passed through the cabin. Passengers looked toward the windows, where other Horizon Atlantic aircraft sat at neighboring gates. Their engines were quiet. Their boarding doors remained open. The airline had not been grounded by a storm or a mechanical failure. It had been stopped by a question no one in this cabin had bothered to ask until it was too late. Why did they believe she did not belong? Naomi listened as Evelyn continued. The board chair is requesting your decision on whether the financing facility should be terminated. Naomi looked at Lily Foster. The young trainee stood beside Carla Monroe, her posture straighter than it had been minutes earlier. Then Naomi looked at Mr. and Mrs. Carlyle, who had returned to their original seats without another word. Finally, she looked at the crew members who had created the crisis. "Not yet," Naomi said. "Termination is not the first step. Truth is." Evelyn paused. "What would you like communicated to the board?" Naomi's eyes settled on Captain Reed. "Tell them the facility remains suspended until an independent review is complete. Tell them every employee involved in this incident must be removed from passenger-facing duties pending investigation. Tell them the review must include prior complaints, altered records, and security escalations connected to appearance, race, or perceived status." Carla nodded once. "I will make sure operations complies," she said. Captain Reed swallowed hard. "Dr. Bennett, I understand if you do not believe me, but I never intended for this to happen." Naomi faced him fully. "Intent does not erase impact. You had chances to stop this. Lily gave you the facts. Passengers gave you the facts. I gave you the facts. You kept choosing the version that made me the problem." Captain Reed had no response. Madison stepped forward slowly. "I made a terrible mistake," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I thought I was protecting the cabin." Naomi looked at her. "You were protecting an image of who you thought belonged in it." Madison's eyes dropped. Richard remained silent until Carla turned to him. "Mr. Cole, surrender your airport access badge and wait outside with the gate supervisors." His face tightened. "You cannot do that." Carla held out her hand. "I can and I am." Richard looked at Naomi one last time, perhaps expecting anger, perhaps expecting triumph. What he found was neither. Naomi simply watched him with the same calm she had carried from the beginning. He removed his badge and placed it in Carla's hand. The sound was small, but it marked the end of the authority he had used so carelessly. Marcus Hill began to clap once. Then the woman in row 4 joined him. A few passengers followed, not loudly, not like a celebration, but like recognition. Naomi raised one hand gently, and the applause faded. "This is not about me winning," she said. "It is about making sure the next person does not have to prove they deserve a seat they already earned." Then she stepped through the aircraft door, not escorted out, not removed, but walking on her own terms while the airline behind her faced the cost of everything it had chosen to ignore. Outside the aircraft, the jet bridge felt strangely quiet. Naomi walked past the gate supervisors and stopped near the glass wall overlooking the runway. Beyond it, Horizon Atlantic planes stood motionless at their gates, silver bodies lying beneath the pale morning sky. Travelers waited in boarding areas with coffee cups, rolling bags, and questions they could not yet answer. A delayed departure notice appeared on the gate screen. Then another. And another. Inside the aircraft, Carla Monroe remained at the door while Captain Reed, Madison Clark, and Richard Cole waited under the watch of airport operations. Naomi's phone rang again. This time, Evelyn Grant did not sound merely prepared. She sounded like the entire world had begun moving at once. "Dr. Bennett, the board has voted to place the passenger conduct review under independent oversight," Evelyn said. "The chief executive officer has accepted the recommendation to remove Captain Reed, Madison Clark, and Richard Cole from active duty pending investigation. Their access to operational systems has been suspended." Naomi looked through the glass toward the aircraft she had just left. "Make sure the notice protects Lily Foster and Carla Monroe," she said. "It will," Evelyn replied. "The board chair has also authorized a company-wide review of every passenger complaint involving unsupported security intervention over the past 3 years." Naomi closed her eyes for a brief moment. 3 years. Thousands of flights. Countless people who might have walked away carrying the same quiet wound her mother had carried decades ago. People who had been told they were a disruption when they asked to be treated fairly. People who had been made to feel small so someone else could feel important. "At an external civil rights firm," Naomi said. "No internal review alone. I want independent findings, published recommendations, and mandatory training tied to executive compensation. Evelyn paused, then said, I will include it. Behind Naomi, the aircraft door opened again. Lily Foster stepped onto the jet bridge, followed by Carla. Lily had removed her service apron, but she still wore her uniform. She looked younger without the tablet in her hands. Dr. Bennett, Lily said. Naomi turned. Lily stopped a few feet away, unsure whether she had the right to approach. I wanted to say thank you, she said. Naomi shook her head gently. Do not thank me for expecting the truth. Lily's eyes glistened. I almost stayed quiet. Most people do, Naomi said. Not because they are bad. Because they are scared. Carla stood beside Lily, arms folded. You changed the course of this morning, she said. Naomi looked back through the glass. No. They did that when they decided I did not belong. Carla nodded slowly. What happens now? Naomi looked at the phone in her hand. The $5 billion facility was still frozen. The airline was still paused. The board was still scrambling to understand how one flight had exposed a problem larger than a single crew. No, Naomi said. They prove they can change. Evelyn's voice returned through the speaker. Dr. Bennett, the board chair is asking whether you will join the emergency meeting in person. Naomi adjusted the strap of her purse. Tell him I am on my way. Then she looked at Lily. You should write down everything you saw while it is still fresh. Lily nodded. I will. Naomi gave her a small smile. And keep speaking when the room gets quiet. As Naomi walked down the jet bridge toward the terminal, the departure screens continued to change. Flights paused. Systems reviewed. Executives called into emergency meetings. But the most important thing had already happened. A young employee had told the truth. Passengers had refused to look away. And a woman they tried to remove had made sure the entire company finally had to listen. The emergency boardroom at Horizon Atlantic headquarters was 12 floors above the runway, surrounded by glass walls that looked out over the same aircraft now waiting at their gates. Naomi Bennett entered without an entourage. Her charcoal sweater was unchanged. Her dark jeans were unchanged. Nothing about her appearance had changed since she walked onto Flight 218 that morning. Only the room had changed. Around the long conference table sat Harold Whitman, the board chair, the chief executive officer, the general counsel, the chief financial officer, and a row of executives who had spent the last hour learning how quickly a company could lose its balance when it forgot the people it served. A screen at the far end of the room displayed the suspended financing notice from Bennett Global Capital. $5 billion. Frozen. Naomi placed her purse on the table and took the empty seat at the head of it. Harold stood. Dr. Bennett, on behalf of Horizon Atlantic, I want to apologize. Naomi looked around the room. An apology is a beginning, she said. It is not a repair. No one interrupted. The chief executive officer leaned forward. We have removed the employees involved from active duty. We are reviewing the flight, the passenger history, and the security escalation process. Naomi nodded once. Good. But do not make this about 3 people. Systems teach people what they can get away with. If your policies let bias hide behind words like procedure, then your policies are part of the problem. The room stayed silent. Outside the glass, a plane slowly pushed back from a distant gate, but Flight 218 remained still. Naomi continued. You will conduct an independent review. You will publish the findings. You will create a protected reporting channel for employees and passengers. You will measure whether your training changes behavior, not just whether people completed a course. And you will tie executive compensation to the results. The chief financial officer looked toward Harold. Those conditions will be expensive. Naomi turned to him. So is losing trust. Her words did not rise. They did not need to. Harold nodded slowly. We accept the conditions. Naomi picked up her phone. Evelyn Grant had already prepared the amended financing terms. Naomi reviewed them for a moment, then looked back at the board. The facility remains suspended until the first phase is complete. You do not earn back trust by promising it. You earn it by showing it. Hours later, as Naomi left the building, Lily Foster stood waiting near the lobby doors with Carla Monroe. Lily had been asked to provide her statement, and she had done it without changing a word. Naomi walked toward her. "How did it go?" Lily gave a nervous smile. "I told them what I saw." "That is enough," Naomi said. Lily looked toward the runway. "Do you think they will really change?" Naomi followed her gaze. The sky had turned gold over the airport. Planes moved slowly in the distance, each one carrying strangers who deserved to be treated like human beings before anyone knew their name, their title, or the number in their bank account. "They can," Naomi said. "But change starts when people stop confusing silence with agreement." Lily nodded, holding those words close. Naomi stepped outside into the evening air. She had not needed to shout. She had not needed to prove her worth with a title or a balance sheet. The problem was never that they did not know she was powerful. The problem was how they treated her when they thought she was not. And by the time the runway lights came on, Horizon Atlantic had learned a lesson no policy manual could ever teach. Dignity is not a privilege reserved for the people you recognize. It is the standard you owe everyone.